Welcome to Meat News. I'm Evan.
I'm Tyler.
And we are here with Michelle Ball of Brant Lake Wagyu in Alberta, Canada. How are you doing, Michelle?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. We're really excited to talk to you today. We haven't talked to a lot of Canadian producers, and so we want to get your perspective of how to raise Wagyu beef, what the Wagyu industry is like in Canada, the Canadian beef grading scale, and all that fun stuff, and how you got into Wagyu beef. So why don't you let us know how you and your family got into this amazing industry?
Correction, you are the first Canadian producer I think that we've talked to, right?
I feel privileged. Thank you very much. Yay! I feel honored. Thank you for reaching out to me and having this conversation about how we raise Wagyu in Canada. So I was introduced to the business through my father-in-law, Jack Ball, who was in the Simmental business and took a trip to Australia, was introduced to a breed that had high marbling genetics, and then came back to Canada, did some research, took a great interest in this amazing breed that had high marbling genetics. Fat was bad for your diet in the 80s, and we needed something new. So that's how he got started and got into breeding a group of cows and did some embryo transfers. Then I married his son, and we started the business of just the Wagyu feeding. Have a large feedlot actually in southern Alberta, and had a cow herd. We started crossing the Wagyu bulls with our Angus herd. It caught on in the mid 2000s. So this would have been 92, and then wow. 2012.
Early.
We were just selling our beef to friends and family, and everybody started raving about this beef that had an amazing flavor and texture. Talked to a chef. They got into a little pub in a small town in Okotoks, and word of mouth spread through the food service industry. So I was in the food industry before, so I kind of took it under my handles and took off with it. And we launched Brant Lake Wagyu, a trademarked brand, in 2012. And wow. The rest is history. And we've just grown incrementally from year to year and crossed with Black Angus. Yeah. And secured our own purebred and full-blood registered Wagyu bulls and work with partner producers. And the last 5 years, we've started working and backgrounding and raising full-blood and purebred Wagyu at our ranch south of Calgary.
And so you said registered. So we know of the American Wagyu Association. Is there an association like that in Canada?
No, there isn't. I'm a member actually of the American Wagyu Association as well. And yeah, I'm not a member with the Australian, but just the American Wagyu. So that's where all the registered information comes from and information.
Do you see that maybe on the radar for Canada to have a certification like the American Wagyu Association? Or
there's not a lot of Wagyu producers in Canada. I believe I'm the largest producer. My partner and I were the largest and still are the largest. There's Wagyu Quebec. Again, their numbers are smaller, but there's a lot of hobby farmers in Canada. So they have 10 head. They buy a bull and try and cross it with whatever herd they have, and that's about it. There's been some new full-blood producers pop up in BC, but no one to the extent that have more than 1,000 head on feed at any one time. So
okay, so
it's a little hard to create a Canadian Wagyu Association when you don't have people. The numbers that you need in the producers, you need to create an association.
Well, let's call it North American Wagyu Association. That's fine, right? No, that's cool. So you do you started with Wagyu and Angus. You start with F1 cross and then get into purebred and then get into full blood and everything like that.
Yes, yeah. I've collected a lot of carcass data. We've harvested over 7,000 head of cattle since 2012. I think it's been really important to track the genetics and the performance. We know there's a lot of different bulls, black bulls in Wagyu and red bulls out there, and everything goes back to the high marbling genetics. You can't just pick any Wagyu bull and cross it with any animal and figure you're going to get a BMS 9 carcass. You have to be tracking your data. You have to track your performance. You got to do your trace back on the bulls that are going to be high marbling traits. And we've crossed with some other breeds, but we found the Black Angus to give us the best performance and the best grading.
Yeah. What other breeds have you crossed with?
We started with some partner producers in the beginning, and there was some Maine Anjou, there was the odd Charlet. And we'd still feed them 800 days, and at best you get AAA. And our AAA is the same as your choice. And in the Wagyu world, that's not acceptable. we have high expectations of high marbling scores. So we veered away from crossing with those other breeds. Dabbled a little bit in some of the, what other crosses have we used? Speckled Park. And again, a higher marbling animal. We've heard about the Holstein cross. I haven't gone that direction. I'm sticking with I know with what works, and we've seen amazing performance of our superstar bulls and these Black Angus with good
Speckled Park is a
days on feed.
New one for me. I've never heard of Speckled Park.
It's another high. It would be I don't know if it's a North American breed. It would have been a European breed. And I know there's quite a few that it's a high grading carcass as well, like the Angus. So higher AAA. So it's a nice combination. I'm still getting some carcass data off of some of those producers' cattle. Again, it takes 4 years to get this information.
Yeah. Right.
It's a waiting game.
Well, can you also, you mentioned AAA Canadian. Can you talk about the Canadian beef grading scale versus the American versus the Japanese?
Yes, of course. So we know there's a common BMS scale of 1 to 12.
Yeah.
We know that the Japanese have their 1 to 5. In Canada, our beef grading is very similar to the American, except the name. So you guys have Select, Choice, and Prime. Select is going to be equivalent to AA in Canada. AAA is going to be your choice, and our primes are going to be the same. It's interesting because the Canadian Beef Grading Agency uses your prime cards to grade my cattle at the plant. So that's how similar they are. And then we can't use the BMS grading score in Canada because it's not recognized. Every country has a different grading scale. That's something we're working on. So right now, all we can do is recognize that they're prime. Now with our program, no different than if you're familiar with not Snake River, but Sterling Silver and Certified Angus, they're recognized as top AAA. So Brant Lake Wagyu has been recognized with the top 2/3 of prime, and they have a score of 700, 800, and 900. And so we're in the 800 and 900 score. And those are very similar to the USDA prime scale.
Okay.
And then we have the BMS 1 to 12. I know Australia's is a little different. They're MBS, and I find that there's some variance between what they call an Australian 8. I would call that more closer to a BMS 6.
Yeah, doesn't it go up to 9 in Australia? 9
it does. So our grading systems in Canada and United States are very similar. I believe that we're both using that BMS 1 to 12 to kind of drill down on the actual marbling score.
Yeah.
And that's that's the guidelines we use.
Yeah, I like that. I think we should. I think that's just a great scale. It's recognizable. We understand it because it is unfortunate that if you create something that is amazing, it's going to get rated prime or, and it's like, well, it's not. It's actually like super prime. That's what we're kind of down here, right? Better than prime. Yeah. So, there needs to be an adjustment. We've had conversations with a few people that say in the States, there's probably going to be another grade that maybe comes out soon, we're hoping, which would be really nice. But I don't know why we don't just use the BMS, 1 through 12. I mean,
for our industry, it would be ideal. I don't know if the commercial and commodity industry would be interested in using that. Certified Angus may use that because, some of their AAA and prime can be very close to the Wagyu grade. When you see a really high marbling Angus animal, you struggle to go, is that Wagyu or is that Angus? But when you eat it, you know the difference.
Yeah.
That intermuscular marbling and that eating experience is definitely, it sets itself apart.
Yeah. So your father-in-law went down to Australia in the 80s and was really probably didn't even know the word Wagyu existed until you went down there and found that. And he brought genetics back up there. Is that the original genetics you guys are using?
No, actually there was actually some semen in tanks at Alta Genetics. And then we actually purchased, when he seen that, they did some crossing, but we purchased our first bulls from Washington State University. So that's where we got our genetics, and that's where we started our herd. Was through those bulls that were out of Washington, and they were papered with American Wagyu Association.
So that's got to be Dr. Jerry Reeves, right?
Pardon me?
That's got to be from Jerry Reeves?
The actual desk, I believe they were right at Washington State. I don't know the particular ranch they would have come from, but I know he knew about these cattle. and they were papered, and actually the one that we bought from Washington just passed away. Like, these guys can live
Jeez,
17 years and was still a rock star in breeding. So
How old?
probably 7.
yeah, yeah. So what year was that you bought that you brought that in? 2002, you said?
That would have been, I'm going to say 94.
94.
Yeah, I'd have to go back to my records. And
Yeah, yeah.
time goes by so fast. You're like,
Early
wow.
90s. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's such a crazy time because nobody was talking about Wagyu beef ever around there. So, yeah, it's pretty cool to see that. I know your father-in-law went down there. We know we talked about Jerry Reeves going to Japan and seeing that stuff and bringing the ideas back here and really opening it up for all of us now to be able to enjoy. So that's pretty cool that you guys have that in common with those guys down at Bar R.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's Canadian Wagyu beef, American Wagyu beef? Is there a difference?
I think the only difference might be in the flavor profile. We feed different. I use barley. That's what we grow here in Alberta. So we have never veered away from feeding barley. So barley silage, rolled barley. A lot of people ask, "Oh, what kind of special diet do you have?" And we really don't. They're hardy in this. We're like Montana weather. They're hardy in Alberta. We have the 4 seasons. Feed is not really anything crazy. We do not implant our Wagyu. That defeats the whole purpose of putting on marbling. We do use antibiotics because we believe in keeping our cattle alive and healthy. I don't know if that's the same or different. Obviously, United States, everything's predominantly corn-based rations, but in Canada and Alberta, I've used a barley-based ration, and that's given us when I've talked to other people, it seems to influence the flavor profile. Very sweet. We
Yep.
have a sweet profile. We have super white fat. It's very clean tasting. And again, your days on feed and those strong genetics are what determine that beef marbling score. So in Washington, I believe most of the feed rations are going to be corn based. I don't know how much barley is used in your rations
The
down
beef
south.
that we use here at the restaurant is predominantly barley finished.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you got mostly barley.
Which is kind of unique, honestly. Like you said, the general conception of the United States is corn, grain, all that stuff. And this farm that we use is trying to steer away a lot of that grass, corn, whatever, and finish on barley. And like you said, it definitely finishes sweeter. The meat is just specifically different.
Yeah.
Which is, I love it. It's amazingly delicious. And
yeah.
You definitely tell the difference.
Yeah, you can. Whatever it's being fed, you can tell. I mean, we just talked to Plum Creek Wagyu, and he is out of Nebraska, strictly corn, and he shipped us some stuff, and it was great. It's about how they're being raised and the care that goes into it, and obviously the quality of the foods can be different things. We've talked about that before because we used to think that corn fed was awful. You shouldn't be doing that. But if it's being forced corn fed and with 10,000 cattle, going through the mill, yeah, that's not so great. But these cows seem to be eating whenever they're hungry. Do you find that as well? Like, that's what he told us. He said there's tons of cows out there. We put a bunch of feed in there. They eat when they're hungry, and then they walk away when they're not.
Yeah. So we're on a low and slow, gradual daily gain. Where the average daily gain from my data that I've collected, we're at 2.2 was actually the average over the whole feeding period. And that can be anywhere from 500 days up to over 1,000 days. So it's just a gradual increase. I do have some producers that I believe have used some corn to background, and that hasn't hurt in the very beginning, gets them started. And they actually, what I'm seeing is they finish a little bit sooner, but the grading is definitely there. But we like to get them on our feed ration without the implants and healthy. My death loss is very low, and these cattle are incredibly healthy and hardy. New producers see this calf and they go, "Oh my gosh, it's a 30, 40, 50 pound calf. Like, it's so tiny. How is it going to survive? And what's it going to look like?" They catch up pretty fast. Just do a gradual, clean water, simple ingredients. We do have some oats in some of the product. We have a nutritionist actually that works out of Texas and works with a lot of Wagyu. So that's been a nice advantage that we've had that's helped us along to maintain a slow rate of gain. And especially, when you need those days on feed to get the grade, you don't want them gaining super fast.
Yeah.
We have to have beef year round. So harvesting every 60 days and making sure these cattle aren't 2,200 pounds. I mean, they're that big coming out of Japan. We know they're well over 2,000 pounds in a live weight, but can the rail system handle that? How much fat are we putting on? It's a science to actually feed an animal for that long, get a rate of gain that's healthy for the animal, and also results in a marbling score that consumers are willing to pay a premium for.
Yeah. I like that. Why do you think those cows are so big in Japan? Is it genetics or is it the way they're feeding them and holding them?
Say the length of feed, length of
Yeah.
time, and they're in stalls, they're in barns. Our cattle have some room to roam, obviously, whether it's a feed yard or the pasture or whatever. So I'm not sure, maybe they let them get that big. But I've noticed on some of the carcass photos that back fat isn't, we've got some animals that had 2 and 3 inches of back fat on them.
I
But
feel
that
like
was long days on feed, and, that depended on what ration, how much they were getting too. So good
maybe that's a
question.
profitability conversation too, because the Japanese raise only so many cattle per farm or ranch or whatever, that they do let them get bigger because the profitability is getting so much larger because the demand for that
Yeah.
cattle is so much higher.
Yeah. Well, I've seen some of their ribeyes and strip loins because we do bring in fresh A5 to our butcher shop just because people want to see the difference. And yeah, those ribeyes and those eyes are massive.
Huge.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
a little bit different than what we're raising here in Canada.
When
So
we bring
that's the other
in,
reason for using an Angus Wagyu cross is we don't get a really small eye from some of the different crosses. I understand the Jersey cross that's out there has a much smaller eye. We've got a nice size eye that serves the food service industry and the restaurants where they're not going, well, I can't cut this steak 2 inches thick because it's like,
it's huge.
10 inches around.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
So
like 50 pounds.
yeah.
Yeah. What's the Wagyu industry like in Canada, or not the industry? What are the people saying? Do they know about Wagyu beef? Are they familiar? The Canadian people, are they familiar with it? I mean, are they calling it Kobe beef? Are we finding that? What do you think about that?
Well, certainly everybody is learning more about it because a lot of the restaurants are serving, and it started probably out with Las Vegas, and that's where New York, and you saw a Kobe steak for $100 an ounce. So if you were a foodie and you traveled, that's how you heard about it how many years ago. And, since the mid 2000s, when there was a lot of different breeds and brands launched, there's organic, there's grass fed, there was Sterling Silver, Snake River Farms. We're very, very similar actually to Snake River Farms. Kind of even the same storyline in history where the father and son start small, grow, work with partner producers, use an Angus Wagyu cross. So, um, as people got out and the restaurants started serving this style of beef, they found out how amazing it tasted and the flavor profile. And now we're at a point where it's affordable. So it's not only in a steak restaurant and white tablecloth. We're seeing it in burger joints and pubs. There's Wagyu hot dogs and Wagyu hamburgers and sausage and jerky, and it's blown up. And people are willing to pay for quality. And when they want that eating experience, it's just grown. It's just grown.
Yeah, no doubt. We've seen it here. I mean, the difference between a $20 Wagyu steak and a $20 steak you're going to buy at the grocery store is
A world of difference.
yeah, you can't even describe it. You can't even describe it. And we talk to a lot of people that come into our butcher shop, and I know you guys have a butcher shop. You probably see the same thing, where we serve prime in our butcher shop, and we serve Wagyu, and we'll have some A5 Wagyu as well. But even just like we'll say, hey, check this Wagyu Zabuton or Denver steak out, and they're like, oh, I can't afford that. And look at that's one right there. It's like $16 or something.
It's $12.
$12 for this a nice little Wagyu Zabuton steak.
Probably 5-ounce Zabuton.
Yeah, I
12.
mean, and so
Isn't that
people,
crazy? Yeah.
yeah, people, that's what we really want to just talk about that. I know when you guys are butchering, you guys get every single cut in your butcher shop. What are some popular cuts there that people are starting to pick up on and maybe order that aren't too out of this world expensive?
ranch steak. So I know that's a cut that was common in the United States, but it was never heard of in Canada. The same as a Denver, a zabuton. And no, not a lot of people hear about a zabuton.
Yeah.
They call the zabuton the Japanese name, and then the Denver the American name. Those are top because they're affordable. The ranch steak, though, out of the shoulder clod with the marbling, unbelievable. It is a $15 steak. It's 7 ounces. It's a good introduction to what Wagyu tastes like, and then they gradually go up.
Full
Cuts
blood
up
Brant
here,
steak,
flat
unbelievable,
irons.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh, flat irons too. No, I like that. It's like we always say the zabuton and those ranches are kind of like the gateway drug to getting people to eat Wagyu because, yeah, I mean, you can totally see the difference. We brought in, you'll cut some choice or prime ranch steaks and you're like, I don't know. Wagyu ranch steak, you're like, holy crap, that is like one of the most beautiful steaks I've ever seen, and it's $10 to $15.
It literally looks like a prime tenderloin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I think the advantage that we have with our Wagyu brand and breed is that we can market every single muscle and it's going to be a good eating experience. Skirt steaks that people used to like, there's so many cuts that you go to your butcher and they put everything into grind and you're like, oh no, not with the Wagyu, like your quads, your tenders, your shanks, like there's not a cut that is not desirable. Maybe a top sirloin is because it just doesn't show the marbling, of course, but the eating experience is still enjoyable. Yeah. And the marbling we're getting out of our hip cuts, unbelievable. And you wouldn't see that in commodity beef. You just wouldn't. In a flank steak. So it's nice that we're able to market every single cut and get a premium price for it. And people can try every single cut depending on their desire for marbling. Not a lot of people want a rich steak either. So that's when it's kind of nice to offer those cuts that have a little less marbling. Our ribeye steak is our top seller in the butcher shop.
Of course.
That's a given.
Totally.
But now the second ones would probably be that zabuton, the Denver, flat iron, of course. And education's huge in our butcher shop. And there's so many cuts in Canada that a bavette, like you would have known about a bavette in Quebec, but no one heard about a bavette in Alberta.
It's so good, the Wagyu
And
bavette.
T-bone and
All
sirloin
those
and
freaking Frenchies over there.
yeah. And a bavette's a wonderful steak as well.
That's so good.
It is. But talking about education, something when I'm at the butcher shop and there's let's say a full blood ribeye and someone's like, I want that. I'm always telling them, I'm like, this is a beautiful steak, but it's very rich. So, you might want to share this and maybe you can share it with 2 people. It's a big 12 or 16 ounce ribeye and it's going to be very hard to eat. And so I want to let people know that before they just go in and eat half of it and go, oh my God, like I don't want to finish this because I have felt like that before eating a Wagyu steak. I'm like, I've had so much and this is too much for me. So I think the education about we've created a little bit of a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the A5 and 1 is the F1 cross tenderloin. And where do you fit in there? And how much richness do you want? Do you want a level 4, which is a full blood ribeye, or do you want something that's maybe more like a F1 cross flank, which is still going to be beautiful and have some decent richness to it? I always like to educate people that you're not eating 12 ounces of A5 steak, but you can have an amazing bavette, F1 cross bavette or a full blood bavette that's going to taste outstanding and not overwhelm you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what makes it more affordable as well as the richness of it. I mean, it's all we're sharing. Tomahawk, they're 32 to 34 ounces. Some big boys can eat those steaks. Yeah. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
Your Texans are like our Albertans. So, I mean, they like a big steak. And that's the nice thing. People have asked me, why did you go F1? Why didn't you go into the full blood and purebred? And why don't we do A5? Well, cost, richness, and you know what? The North American consumer wants to eat a steak. Yes. Whether it's 7 ounces or 12 ounces, they want to enjoy a steak on their plate.
We say that all the time.
F1 cross is really a good way to go, and then there's other options.
We love it.
There's other options.
We love F1. I mean, I get really excited about amazing marbling, but if I'm like, I want to have a great steak, like an F1 Cross New York, all day long, I could eat that whole thing, and it is going to be one of the best steaks I've ever eaten every single time. So, you don't have to go crazy.
We've seen some BMS 7, 8, and 9 out of our F1s. And so that's just telling me, and that's, 700 days on feed, not too ridiculous. 32, 33 months of age animal, average daily gain 1.7 in the end. And to get that marbling score of an F1 means that we're doing something right with the genetics. That we
Absolutely.
have really, I've done a lot of research, there's a lot of lines out there of Japanese breeds that have higher marbling traits, and that's the key part of what we're focusing on because that's what we're selling. We're not stock producers, we're not too concerned about the milk problem or the calf weight or the size. It's really what is that marbling going to look like when we're done feeding this animal. So,
Finished product.
yeah.
So just in some context, you guys are feeding, or you're harvesting your animals, what, 30 to 33 months, right around there?
Yeah, we start harvesting about 25 to 26 months of age. I made the mistake of harvesting some cattle a little too early. It was actually 23 months of age. I had a lot of AAAs and I wasn't very happy with that. And I'm like, what happened here? And it only needed 2 more months of feed, and that changed greatly. And obviously, the longer you feed, the better the marbling you're going to get. So we go anywhere. We start at 25 and we go all the way up to 38 and 39 months of age. And we're able to manage that weight gain. So this animal that we're harvesting isn't over 1,800 pounds when we harvest it. So it's easy for us. It's easy for the plant to handle that carcass. We're not getting these gigantic muscles and ribeyes and strip loins. We've got a nice portion sized muscle. So after 13 years, I think we've nailed it. I'm really happy. I think we've nailed it. So we just got to keep growing the business and doing what we're doing and educate people. Yeah.
So what is Canadian commodity beef? What do they usually harvest their animals at generally?
Well, no different than the United States. No different than the United States. So you've got cattle on feed for 120 days, 240 days at a feedlot. They're harvesting those. Right now, everybody's, sending cattle a lot bigger to the plants. Everything is going in at, the steers are going in at 1750 or 16, where heifers used to go in at 1,200 pounds to the packing plants. And now those heifers are 15 and 1,600 pounds going into the plants. We've got more meat supplied. So we're
Yeah,
no different than the commodity guys, really, with that age, that weight of the animal going into
but
the
the
pack.
age difference, right? Like they're
Age
probably about
difference. Yeah,
18 months or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
And so
exactly.
it's the slow feed, the care that goes into producing this great product really is what you're paying for. And it's not just, doesn't just taste better, it's also healthier. Do you want to talk a little about some of those health benefits?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Please.
Love
the
these.
fat benefits. So my
This is where
father-in-law as
the
well has
education
always
comes in
supplied
huge.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, what's that?
This is where the education for us comes in huge
Love it.
because the health benefits, people think we're lying to them because the, you know, common misconception of Wagyu is like, oh, it's so fatty, I can't eat so much fat. Like, no, 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 no. You don't get it. The fat is good fat. It is high in all the vitamins, rich in omegas.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I was able to get there's a lot of studies that have been done at Texas A&M, obviously, on the fat. I'd like to see more current studies because things have changed over the years. And these are studies that were done in the 80s and the 90s when Wagyu was coming into North America. And they're like, what is this beast and what is it made up of and what makes it special? Like, what are the benefits? So I know there's lots of studies out there that Washington State and Texas A&M have done on the quality of the fat and the kind of fat. We've told consumers to talk about it easily. It's no different than the fat quality of avocado or salmon. It's high in those omegas, monounsaturated. Like it is the healthy fat that is going to be good for your diet. And now it's good for your skin.
Yes. Are you getting into those products, that product phase here?
Well, we're predominantly focusing on the the feed tallow, like just
Yeah.
cooking with it. The cosmetic industry is another dynamic part. That's great because guess what? We're utilizing that entire carcass and now we're getting paid for fat.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fat. There's a
Yeah,
lot of fat to get used, right?
It's
yeah.
a lot of
No,
fat that can
fats are
be.
incredibly healthy,
Yeah.
and in the diet, and we see it you see it in the carnivore trend, of eating carnivore and eating red meat and eating meat with fat. Lots of studies out there. that, prove that this is a healthy fat and that red meat is not bad for our diet.
Yeah, it's got all the nutrients that we need as a human being. That is, we love that. It's like the olive oil, the salmon, the avocado fats. It's very good, very heart healthy, monounsaturated.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of the greatest things about it, and it tastes good. Like,
and
that's
it tastes amazing,
right? They're like, there's no way that the steak this good is going to be like, better for me than something else.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, we love that, man. That's one of our favorite things to talk about is always the health benefits, because once we can push those through and get people to actually understand that it's good for you to eat this. It's not bad to eat red meat. It's bad to eat commodity crap meat that is just being force fed and slaughtered at 16 months and not well cared for and pumped with a whole bunch of hormones. That is not good for you. But this stuff that takes a long time to produce and to feed, and that are taken care of for 30 months. I mean, like, that is something. It's like an aged whiskey or an aged wine. It has care and thought put into it, and it is so good. So we want to push that through. We want to make sure people understand that.
Well, it definitely improves the quality. And you know what? Any beef that we saw this during COVID, right? When they couldn't get into the plants with some of these cattle, that these producers had to feed their cattle a lot longer. And all of a sudden, the average prime went from 2 or 3% in Canada. All of a sudden it's 6%. So everybody learned something from feeding cattle a little longer, you get higher quality. Of course, the consumers have to understand that with longer days on feed, you've got more expense, but people are willing to pay for quality. So I think the demand for prime worldwide, doesn't matter what country you're in now, people are not, AAA is not even, let's get prime, let's get better than prime on the plate in the restaurant and on a barbecue.
Yeah, and that's
the barbecue competitors. Hey, they like the prime and they like the Wagyu too.
Yeah. Well, how do you like to cook Wagyu?
I'm a reverse sear.
Okay.
I do have a smoker. I do have a barbecue. Sous vide is another method. We've tried all of them. People get really scared about putting it on a barbecue. And we say, don't be scared to cook this Wagyu. But a cast iron pan is your friend. The oven is your friend. If you're going to go to the barbecue, just don't walk away with your beer and think that it's not going to have black char on it.
Yep. Don't burn down the house.
Yeah. And a smoker. You know what? A good old smoker. I mean, just cooking it perfectly and having that pink edge to edge. Yeah. So all of those methods are really perfect to use.
We do a lot of that here. We have a smoker in our back patio for our restaurant. So Chef Tyler smokes all these different cuts. We've experimented with full Denver steaks. We do a lot of tenderloin, whole New York strips, prime ribs. Trying to figure out what are some unique muscles that we can actually smoke. What else have you smoked, Tyler? Culottes and yeah,
a whole culotte. So I'll dry brine it overnight, slow smoke it, and I actually put the fat cap down on the grate when I put it in the smoker because it's so thick.
Yeah.
You get a little bit of render out of it, but then when you hit that 125, 130 internal temp and you pull it off and let it rest, and then you reverse sear on the plancha that fat.
Yeah.
that one's really fun.
Yeah. And fat on tri-tips too. That's kind of like the culotte that you would.
Fat on tri-tip
Tri-tips are very nice. And
changed my life because we used to get a lot of fat off tri-tips for the case and for our consumers. But then I got fat on, and it was an F1 cross fat on when the first time I got it, and that fat is, I call it the bubblegum fat. It's got, just because it's a term I like to use because it's got that kind of squishiness to it.
Yeah.
Not like that thick, hard New York strip kind of fat cap or picanha cap. This one's all bubbly, and when you slow smoke fat on tri-tip and reverse sear it, fuck,
that's
like
awesome.
For real.
It's bonkers good.
Yeah.
I think the problem with tri-tip is that we have to teach people how to cut it because there's different running grains. So people are like, oh, I don't know why you think that tri-tip's so good. It was all fucking chewy. I'm like, well, did you cut it the way I told you to cut it? Or there's definite education here at the butcher shop. 1 on Wagyu, 2 on health benefits, 3 on cooking methods, 4 on, I almost like to give people a passport almost an around the world Wagyu passport. So I'm like, okay, what did you try last time? Like, I had the zabuton. I was like, okay, today you're going to try a culotte. Tomorrow you're going to try a ranch steak. Later down the road, you're going to have a special occasion. You're going to have a New York strip or a ribeye. I like people to come in here and tell me what they thought. They're like, you know what? I'm a ribeye guy all day, but that was so rich. I don't think I can do that every day. And I'm like, you shouldn't, because you're right. It is super rich. So you go for those leaner cuts, you go for the terrace majors, you go for anything out of the shoulder, flat irons, Delmonicos, even to that point. It's super fun for our consumers to come in here and actually get to talk to me about different cuts. And like an F1 flank steak or a full blood skirt steak, my God. Full blood skirt steak?
Yeah. Well, the F1 stuff is unbelievable.
Really
it is education, and it's fun to spend 20 minutes with a consumer and not only educate them about, the health and wellness and where they're from and how they're raised, but all the different cuts and cooking them properly.
how it eats.
Canada Beef up here, they're promoters, obviously, of Canadian product, but they have such a huge comprehensive website that shows the consumer and the food service chefs how to break down all of these primals, how to cut it after it's been cooked, just to get the best eating experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Beef Gateway. If you check out Canada Beef on your website and see all the links to that, I know your website in the States I use it actually all the time because I see all the different cuts before Canada Beef actually had something up here. But that's a huge part of it, eating experience and customer satisfaction. Because they can screw up, overcook it, cut it the wrong way. You've just messed up your eating experience. So yeah, that's a big part of the education in the butcher shop.
Absolutely, and it is a little bit more expensive. So us teaching them how to do it right, hopefully will take away that fear, because a lot of people are very scared. They're like, "This is a pretty expensive steak. I don't want to screw it up." But luckily, it's really good from medium rare to medium well, so it is kind of hard to screw up, but you still can.
Yeah, if you overcook it, you're definitely in trouble. Especially some of the cuts that don't have, that intramuscular marbling has been, cooked out, and then you're just left with the red meat that's brown.
Yeah.
Unless it's a flat iron.
Yeah, flat iron.
Yeah, unless it's a flat iron. Yeah.
Flat iron is the one steak out of the animal that you can cook mid-well to well done if you have those ding-dong eaters in your family like I do. My sister and my nephew, they are mid-well to well done eaters. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah.
I've converted those people, Tyler.
I'm going to serve the rest of the family tenderloins, and they're going to eat it the way that I want to eat it. But if I get a flat iron for them, it's still going to be tender. It's still going to be flavorful. It's still going to be delicious. It's just one of those gems,
Hey, Michelle, do you remember the first time you actually tried Wagyu beef?
It probably would have been in Vegas.
Okay.
A special trip, went to a nice steakhouse and paid that $100 an ounce for 2 ounces of Wagyu and went, yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know if I can spend that much money every week. And I like beef.
Yeah.
So when we were raising it ourselves and had it, and like even to enjoy the ground beef, in the States.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's 3 times a week easily, if not 4 or 5 that it's consumed. So yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And just knowing that they're just so juicy, and that you sit there and you have a bavette that's cooked perfectly and you cut into it after you've let it rest, because people make that mistake of not letting something rest.
Thank
You
you.
get excited.
Yep.
You get into it and you're like, just give it 5 minutes.
Settle down.
It's like a great bottle of red wine. You just sit back and you go, wow, that's really, really good.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Gosh, I love it. I love it. Well, what else do we need to know about Wagyu? What does the world need to know about Wagyu beef? What are our consumers missing out on? What is one thing you think that they maybe there's a myth out there that needs to be corrected? What is one thing you think that they really need to know about Wagyu beef?
Maybe the massage thing, the feeding the beer, but you know what? Some Wagyu producers are going back to, we have olive fed. We have producers that are using other byproducts to enhance the flavor, to add a flavor. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, there's many things you can do with it. What do consumers need to know? That it's affordable and it is a great eating experience. You're not going to break the bank. Start small, try it. You know what? It's a special occasion. product. And if you can get it fit it into that freezer and that fridge and serve it up more than once, there's so many different cuts. And like I said, people want a good eating experience. There's nothing worse than eating something that has a lack of flavor. It's dry, then they go back to the other proteins. And
why eat it, right? If
yeah,
it's not good, why eat it? I don't like. Yeah,
I do like to support the other proteins though. Like a well-rounded diet, I think is really important for people. So if you're gonna eat red meat, make it the best that you can afford, and you can afford Wagyu. And you know what? You're supporting some very passionate producers as well that put in their heart and soul into raising these animals that take 4 years. This isn't a quick and dirty, like, breed, feed into the package. It is a long process. So teaching that to people, letting them recognize that it's a product that takes a lot of care. And when you feed your animals right and treat them right, you're going to have a great eating experience no matter what. And there's many countries that are feeding Wagyu. It's just a matter of dabbling in it, doing something. And they're docile, they're quiet, they're easy to work with.
that's here.
Other producers are like, this is really easy, and I get paid a premium because I'm raising an animal that's in high demand and has high quality.
Funny thing that it's kind of a reoccurring message that we've gotten from some other ranchers is that these cattle are so nice. They're almost like pets. I hate to say that, but they're docile, and they come over and talk to you and, check you out. They're like, when we have the feedlot beef and Angus and the way that they've been bred in the States, you almost got to watch out because they're going to run you over to go to feed that. They're just going to force feed themselves because it's ingrained in their DNA, part of their brain. It's funny to hear that this breed is such a nice animal.
Yeah. I think that's part of their genetics too, though.
Yeah.
I think they're genetically inclined to just be a calmer animal, and maybe they're calmer because they're around people for so long. I know with my son, he can go up and scratch any of the bulls. Like, there's the relationship between mother cows and the calves and the bulls. But it's again that time that they spend around people, obviously, and their atmosphere, how they're being raised, kept clean, dry.
Yeah.
Fresh water. There's green pastures, and then there's the grain that they're getting fed. So,
when we went to see Arlie and Dr. Reeves, I might have had a couple too many Coors Lights, maybe, but I jumped the fence and just started running around with those cattle over there, and I wasn't scared at all. But they're just such nice animals. And they're huge. Some of them are big.
Yeah. Some of the bulls can be a fair size.
Yeah. I got one more question, and one of the worries is if to bring Wagyu to the forefront of beef and bring it really to the masses. One worry that I always have is like once that gets taken to the masses and everybody knows about it, it could start to lose quality, right? Then the wrong people get into this industry. Right now, there's so many great people, small producers that are doing the right thing to bring this amazing quality beef. But we know once the big money really gets into it and brings it to the masses, it could, the quality could go down. How do you think we can bring Wagyu beef to the general public so everybody knows about it without it getting too big and losing that quality?
I think it's going to be a product, like champagne. It's special. It's not meant to be for the masses. I think it needs to be kept as a very premium product, and it takes patience to do this. And there's so many new producers that have gotten into the production and crossing. They're not particularly using a cross that's going to work. And then they get impatient, like, well, it's 24 and 25 months of age. It's got to be ready to go. You got to have some deep pockets feeding cattle for this long. And then when you add in economies and interest rates and feed costs and transportation, I don't think it's going to become a massive market. It's going to stay a specialized product. Like I said, no different than unique truffle. Just think of the unique items in the world that are produced that stay small for a reason. And it's because we want to keep if you keep it small, you're going to keep the quality. And those people do find out they don't have the patience, they don't have the longevity, they don't have the money to do it. I mean, it's not for everybody. It's like I said, it takes patience, it takes time, research. You got to do your research. You can't just cross any black bull with any cow and think you're going to get this BMS 8 and 9 product.
Yeah.
So because of those factors, I don't think it's become hugely mainstream. I think it's going to always be a specialized market, but it's not a fad that's going to go away.
Yeah.
I think it's more of just an awareness or a high-end product that's available for people. No different, like I said, because we didn't hear very much about grass-fed and organic. Like pre-80, beef was beef. Commodity beef was beef. It was a Simmental and it was brown and white, and that's what we ate.
And you feed it a bunch of corn and you send it to the lot,
Yep.
and it gets a steak for dinner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Angus was a common breed too. So now we see all kinds of breeds out there, and specialized breeds, certified Angus, Wagyu, grass-fed, organic. And you know what? There's room for all of us in the marketplace. Consumers have a choice. Not everybody wants a rich steak. What can they afford?
Mhm.
What is their palate? I'm just happy that we can supply something that we're happy to raise and people get joy out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. And you're right. It would be hard to kind of cheat the system and just feed these cattle real quick and get them out. Like you can't do it.
You're not going to get the results, Evan. The results are not going to be there.
Exactly. I love that. So that is such a great comparison to the champagne and the truffles and things like that, where, hey, you know what? You can't cheat the system. You're going to get the quality. Not everybody can do it. And the people who do it hopefully still have that love for it. And everybody that we've met in the Wagyu industry is such a great person and really cares about bringing better beef to their customers, to the public, to whoever wants to try it. So it's really encouraging.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very passionate industry.
For sure.
Like anybody in the cattle industry. I mean, it's not an easy job.
Yeah.
You know, the 365 days a year, you have to feed no matter what that weather type is like. We just got out of a deep freeze that was minus 30. It wasn't blowing snow, but it was cold. And you know what? You can't say, I'm not going out to feed. You got cattle water bowls that are frozen, and keep your cattle dry, keep them fed, get them water. If they're happy, they're gonna provide us with some pretty good meat.
Yeah.
Michelle, I grew up in Billings.
Okay.
So last week we had sunshine, blue skies, and I think it was 25 degrees here in Seattle for a couple of days. Fucking made me so happy. Like, this isn't cold. You don't know what cold is. This is crisp. It's nice. I miss it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in Alberta, we have the Chinooks, so we can go from minus 24 like we did yesterday up to plus 13. So it could be a 30-degree swing within hours.
Crazy.
And the cattle are just fine.
And
it's out
you
there.
know what? They're happy it's warmed up too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, well, Michelle, thank you so much. This has been really informative. We've really enjoyed talking to you, getting to know you and Canadian beef, Canadian Wagyu. You know, please reach out to us anytime. We'd love to build this relationship. And if we have questions, hopefully we can reach out to you and ask you some fun things and get your feedback on things, because we just want to keep showcasing Wagyu in the best light to all of our people and get that word out that, hey, you can afford it if you look for the right cuts, and you know, if you want to eat quality beef, this is the type of beef that you got to be eating.
So Brant Lake Wagyu is distributed right across Canada.
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of export, but we have countries that are demanding, as we know, Alberta beef is the best beef. Canadian beef is well sought out, you know, so we do offer our product right across Canada. I'm working on export to Mexico and overseas. And you know what, other parts of the world, you know, they're willing to pay for good quality as well. And I think North America is a good starting point for access to high quality, safe food with with amazing flavor.
So where can people find you at? What's your website?
BrantLakeWagyu.ca, and I do distribute right across Canada. I'm with federal facilities. We harvest 100 head every 60 days. So we focus on quality and consistent quality and quantity and having a choice for consumers. And we're pasture to plate. We've dabbled in everything right from the breeding right to the end where it's on the plate. that's the passion we have. Family business, love what we do. And I follow all you guys in the States, so I know what's going on, and we have to stick together and share our stories, share our knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
thank you very much for
You're welcome.
the chat.
You're welcome. Yeah, no, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. We'll definitely be reaching out, and maybe when we go visit Tyler's family in Billings, Montana, we'll have to pop up to see.
Oh, I'm coming.
We all need a road trip to Japan, because I haven't been to Japan, so that's bucket list for me to know where all of this really started, and that's the country of Japan.
There's some golf courses that I want to play up there in your neck.
Very important
as well.
Important. No, yeah, we should do a trip. We should look into it. Get a bunch of people over there. I know the Wagyu Olympics were last year, 2 years ago. We missed those, but it's every 4 years or something like that, I believe. But it'll be a fun trip to get a bunch of people to go over there. Yeah, and check it out, the homeland.
Yes.
Well, once again, you can see Brant Lake Wagyu. You can go find Michelle and all her amazing beef, Wagyu beef there. It says BRANT, right? Brant Lake.
Yes, no D in there.
No D in there. I'll put that in the notes as well. But once again, thank you so much, Michelle. We really appreciate it. And
thank you.
Yeah, if you need anything, please reach out.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
You're welcome.